Hello, this is Cory Stillman for Awards Radar, and I'm here with Sagar Radia, who plays Rishi on Industry. Sagar, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. Enjoying some time in New York at the moment, so it's nice, a nice time to be in the city during Christmas.
I would imagine it's so beautiful there that time of year. Are
Yeah,
you are
gorgeous.
you normally based in London year round, or?
Yeah, I'm London born and raised and based there, but yeah, just here for a bit of work and stuff. So it's again just a beautiful city to be in during Christmas.
Very cool. Yeah, the listeners probably don't care about this, but I spent a year living in London. I lived in right by Arsenal, like right in
Oh, nice.
on
So
off
North London.
Holloway Road, yeah, in North London.
Nice,
So
nice, nice. Oh,
it,
amazing, man.
it's also a beautiful city around this time of year. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
No,
kind of
no,
you kind of can't you
absolutely.
can't lose no matter which side of the ocean you decide to land on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I was really excited about this conversation because I'm a big fan of industry, been a big fan of it since the beginning. But of course, season three, I think it's fair to say, does really kind of push the show to a new level. Like it really feels like the show is pushing the envelope creatively from a storytelling standpoint. And there's a number of reasons that's the case. But before we jump into those, I kind of just wanted to ask you broadly, like, was that something that you all sort of felt coming into this season? Like, did you sense that sort of growth, that kind of the show sort of taking that next step from a creative and a narrative standpoint?
I think you can never really anticipate what a show's going to do. I think as characters, as actors, when you're playing the character, you're sort of invested in that. I think if you let yourself worry too much about the external factors, the audience, in terms of like, what's the reaction going to be to this? And, I wonder if it will, this many people will see it, or, this will be the, I think you can get yourself into trouble and take your focus away on what's the most important thing, which is, being there and doing the work and actually just being present in the moment. Um, so in one sense, no, is the short answer to your question. I don't think so. That being said, when you're reading the scripts that they've leveled up. Like the great thing about Mickey and Conrad is as writers, as showrunners, and in this case directors, they directed some of the eps in season three, is that they evolve and they get better and they get smarter and they have just taken the show to another level from season one. Season two was better than one, and I think three was better than two. And I like to think I think they would say the same thing. So you know that the quality of work that's going to come through is going to be high because that's what they do. They're high achievers as humans in general. So we were very excited when we got the scripts. Especially when I got my sort of standalone episode, that was a whole host of emotions. But it that you could argue that was a risk. You could argue that who knows how that was going to be received, and that was a big step for them to take. And I'm so grateful that they did, and that they had the faith in me to sort of carry that episode. And so yeah, I don't know. I think we just sort of all went into it head down, putting the work in, and seeing what would happen.
Yeah, so you actually brought me right to my next question because of course, any conversation with you has to focus pretty heavily on White Mischief, that incredible episode that focused on Rishi. And yeah, like I guess bring us to that moment that you just sort of alluded to. You talked a little bit about your kind of emotional response, but what was the process like of first discovering that there's going to be essentially a bottle episode about your character, that you would be entrusted to, like you said, sort of like carry this episode from an acting standpoint. Yeah, just talk to us about that initial kind of process and from an emotional and just like logistical standpoint.
Yeah, so I've mentioned this a few times, but what happened was we had a cast and crew screening for season two. If I'm right in saying season three hadn't been commissioned at that point. So we're there just, for a screening and having a bit of a social and catching up with people you haven't seen for a while. And I speaking to Mickey and he said, "Hey, we've got this really great idea for you for season three, if it goes. And it's going to be this sort of bottleneck standalone episode." And the truth of the matter is I didn't really believe him. I kind of thought, oh, that's a really great idea, but HBO aren't going to go for that. So who am I? I'm this sort of functional supporting character that's been in season one and two. They're never going to give me a whole episode. I never said that to him, but I just sort of smiled and was like, absolutely, that would be great. And then cut to like I think it was about a year later, and we're doing pre-production for season three, and I realized this episode's happening, and it was just I don't know. There was again a whole array of emotions, but I was so pumped and so ready to kind of take on a challenge like that. I've been in the game for a minute, and you go your whole career trying to get an episode like this as an actor, to be challenged and pushed to this extent. And Conrad even said that to me. I remember when I knew the episode was going to be finalized, and Conrad said, "Listen, I promise you, Saga, it's going to push you, it's going to test you, it's going to challenge you as an actor, it's going to make you better." And I was ready for that challenge. I was completely, again, you're looking for it as an actor. You don't know where it's going to come from, and I'm so grateful that they sort of entrusted me with that. So, that was step one, and then you get the script, which was, I think I got it through midway. We were shooting episode 1 and 2 of season 3, and then they gave the episode to me. Um, Again, exciting, nervous, all the emotions you can think of went through me. But then you have to kind of put that aside and just get your head down and start the work, which is ultimately the most important thing. If you're gonna be trusted to carry this episode and be in it 95% of the time, you have to make sure you deliver and put the work in and get your head down and figure out what this episode looks like, the emotional journey, the beats, how the audience is going to feel about it, what Rishi's going to feel about it, what his wife's going to feel about it, how you're going to play all these scenes. And again, for me to carry the episode, I'm also looking at it from a scheduling perspective and going, great, what do I need to get done this week that next week can wait? Do you know what I mean? You're figuring out all these different things as an actor, to help you deliver the best possible episode that you can, the best performance that you can. And Zoe Whittock, our director, was so helpful towards me. She was like, "Let me know what you need." And I did say to her, I said, "Listen, I know Rishi. I've played him for a couple of seasons. I know what he's about. What I need the help with is charting and journeying, journey. I don't even know if that's a word. Charting the emotional beats that Rishi goes on through the graph of the episode. Because again, you shoot out of sequence. So day one of our shoot was the casino scene, which is a really tough place to begin.
Yeah.
But again, you're charting these emotional beats and going, okay, today we're here, today we're here, today we're here, then we're here again. So Zoe was instrumental in sort of helping me along that journey. So yeah, it was a great experience all around.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and again, such an incredible episode, such a great
Thank you.
performance. Every aspect of that episode is just like that. Really is the show at the peak of its powers. I think just in every single way. And I've seen a lot of comparisons of that episode to like Uncut Gems and sort of like the Safdie brothers films,
Yeah.
like some Cassavetes kind of influence, just like in terms of like the close up and the kind of chaotic nature of it all. But I'm curious for you as a performer, were there any sort of touchstones that were inspirations for you coming into that episode, or anything that you sort of thought about as you prepared for that performance?
Not really, because I'm quite I like, as an actor, I like to keep things as simple as possible. I try not to overthink things. That being said, I did rewatch Uncut Gems because it was referenced so highly, and I'd seen it before, and obviously it's a fantastic film, but I just wanted to go in and just watch Adam Sandler's journey as an actor and how he placed himself in that, and where he started and where he got to. So it was more just looking at it from an emotional standpoint to see what he did. Not trying to replicate it, just kind of seeing if there was any kind of nuggets that I could take and apply in this way. Because again, it's you're looking at the intensity, you're looking at the emotional arc of what's going on. You're looking at the highs and lows of what both characters are feeling. Um, Other than that, not really. I kind of just again got my head in the script, did the work, figured out who he was in this episode and what that looked like for him. Um, yeah, as I touched on, I think if I'm not the actor who can reference too many films or projects or books or theatre shows or whatever it may be, because I think it would sort of throw me into a bit of a haze of sort of information overload.
Yeah, that's almost why I asked, because I know I've heard that response from actors. It can there can be different approaches to that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate those insights. So now the last question I have on that episode is the aftermath, like the reaction, because it did get such a strong reaction from fans, and as you sort of mentioned, like Rishi was kind of this like functional kind of character beforehand. He was definitely I think like a fan favorite of sorts. Like people were,
Yeah.
were were wondering if he would get an opportunity similar to this one. But yeah, he kind of did just like hover in the background of a lot of episodes. He would chime in with some fun lines here and there, and of course he gets this moment, and the fan and critical response just was like out of this world. So yeah, just what was it like for you to just kind of see all that and respond to that?
You know what's really strange, and I said this to Mickey and Conrad, is that I didn't see it coming. Like, I don't know if that's just as an actor, you're just invested in the episode and just making it the best it can be. I'm not thinking too much about the response or what that's going to look like. And then when it came out, I genuinely thought it would just come and go. I kind of got to like episode three, and then episode four was about to come out. I was in Los Angeles at the time, and I thought, okay, great, it'll be a nice little break, and then it'll be back to sort of, Harper, Robert, Yasmin, Henry Muck now is the addition to the cast, and people were really looking forward to Kit being in the show. And I thought, okay, great, it will be a nice little respite, and then back to, regular scheduled programming, for want of a better term. And I don't know, it kind of just had this life, and this I'm still living with this, the aftermath of the episode, and that's so flattering and lovely and humbling. And when you hear about it from different people who like the show, whether it's people who are DMing you or you know big successful famous actors saying nice things to you, who which you just can't believe they even know who you are, and they're watching your work. It's kind of crazy. So I don't know. It's kind of all sort of. It was initially sort of feeling like a deer in the headlights, and now it's like a great place where I can just really enjoy it and just let it go. And it's not mine anymore. It's out for the audiences to see the show and the episode and the whole show from season one to three. And I get to just sit back and just let it be. And again, it's the audience's show. And if anyone comes up to me, says something nice, that's a win in itself for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, like I when I first watched that episode, I finished it and I said to myself, I think that is one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen. And
Oh, that's very
that
kind.
can,
Thank you.
yeah, and like I think you have a reaction like that, and you almost need to confirm it, right? And so I rewatched it for this interview, and I can confirm it truly is one of the best episodes of TV I've seen. And
Oh,
I
thank you.
so yeah,
Yeah,
like
I've been very lucky, and in the sense that, a few people have said that to me, and um, it's hard to comprehend, truthfully speaking. I think it's hard to be objective because you're so involved in it and the intricacies of
of
it and
course,
filming it and the scripts. And, as an actor, I'm watching it going, oh, they used that take. Oh, they went for that angle for that bit. Oh, interesting. Okay. So it's difficult to kind of be objective and step back and kind of see it for what it is. I'm kind of curious to know. I mean, this is not possible. I'm curious to know what I would have been as Saga as a fan watching that episode, whoever would have played it. Um, it would have been a different experience. But listen, it's all positive. It's all flattering, and I'm just super humble and grateful for it.
of course, yeah. And you mentioned before too how you sort of thought, oh, this might have this great episode, and then we'll kind of go back to regularly scheduled programming. And that's really not the case. Like, this episode sets up some really essential storylines for Rishi that
Yeah,
become through lines for the rest of the season and obviously culminate in a finale filled with a lot of crazy moments. You know, probably the most shocking. I think it's safe to say the most shocking moment in that finale, and the moment that I think it's kind of like escalates the stakes of this show in a way that we haven't quite seen yet. I guess sort of similar to what I asked you earlier. Like, what was kind of your reaction when you realized that moment what was coming and yeah, it's like what was that like for you as an actor and as someone who's been close to this character to realize, oh no, this we're living in a different world now, because that Rishi's world is entirely
yeah.
changed by the end of season three.
Shock is the initial word that comes to mind. The boys had told me about what was going to happen, and I think creatively speaking, it was necessary. Maybe some people would argue that they didn't think it was going to be in this way, but Rishi had to be held accountable for his actions. And at the end of episode four, he you could we all see he kind of got away with it, and he was back in his cycle. He rang Vinny at the end on the phone, had Raja back in his arms, and he was like, "Yeah, put that bet down." And you're like, Jesus, after all of that, he hasn't changed. But then we get to eight, and in fact, in seven, we see his arm in a sling, and you're like, okay, something's brewing here. We get to episode eight, and then obviously what happens happens. Um, Something needed to happen. He had to be held responsible. He needed to be held accountable for his actions. And I think everybody probably thought it was going to happen to Rishi, but what better way for dramatic effect for it to be the closest person to him? And now the question is, who is Rishi, and what does that look like going forward?
Yeah, and it's going to be so interesting to follow. And like you mentioned, yeah, I have seen there's been a lot of discourse online over whether that was a quote unquote like right decision or what should or should not have happened. But I think the fact that those conversations are happening at all are a testament to what you're saying. Something had to happen, something dramatic had to happen. Like he had to learn a lesson in some way. And
Yeah.
I think the best TV shows kind of force us, into those confrontations, into those these exact kinds of conversations. So yeah,
I
just
think
really a great storytelling.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the best conversations are conversations. You don't want someone to go, "Oh yeah, I forgot about his wife." Like, do you know what I mean? You want someone to have a
Right.
reaction, good, bad, or otherwise. A reaction is better than no reaction.
Exactly.
So, however people feel about it, if we're instilling a feeling in them, we've done our job.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, so I just have two more kind of like broad level questions about your work on this show. And one of them is a question that I'm sure you've gotten maybe a few times before is how similar or not similar would you say you are to Rishi? I mean, just in talking to you for a few minutes here, you seem like a pretty even keeled guy. You know, you don't seem to have like the same potty mouth that he might have. But I'd imagine for any actor, that's always some sort of negotiation you're making in your mind of
Yeah.
what is my relationship to this character and how do we diverge and relate in different ways. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, we both like Coke. Mine just comes in a red can.
There you go.
Um, um, make sure you clip that in the right way,
Yeah,
otherwise
I was
I'm in
gonna.
trouble.
Yeah, right. That's a great
Um,
line. I don't know if you used that one
oh,
before, but you should definitely file that one away. That's awesome.
I think, me as Sagar, I like to think of myself as a relatively confident person. I think what allows me to be relatable to Rishi in that sense is that I get to just amplify that confidence. It's me times 10, and then that's Rishi. So that's probably one of the other key similarities I probably have with him, which I think is important to play when you're playing that sort of alpha, chest out bravado. Again, I'm not Sagar. I don't necessarily conduct my life every day like that, but I definitely have a confidence where I can sort of just apply myself to things, and I don't necessarily find myself as someone who's too insecure or self doubt. Again, I'm very fortunate in that way that I have that thought process and have grown up in that way. But again, I was able to apply those things that I am to Rishi again and just amplify it further to take it to where the character was.
Yeah, it's funny because you use the word functional earlier to describe his character, and I think one of the most like beautiful aspects of this show, and I mentioned to you before we hopped on that I just finished talking to Ken Leung as well, and I spoke to him a little bit about this. You know, like both of you coming from different Asian backgrounds, and playing characters that's not it's not like there's nothing about the character where that's like necessarily required right within the script, and yet it's so powerful. I think, especially for a character like Rishi, who's like so confident, and that obviously we now know lives this very full, complex life. To be South Asian, and have that representation. So it's one thing for me to say that, but I'm curious for you as a South Asian actor playing this character, what has it kind of meant to you to be playing someone who is so much more than functional? That's why I brought that up, is I think and unfortunately, when you historically when we think about those kinds of roles, that is kind of maybe where characters of certain backgrounds have landed, and obviously Rishi's so much more than that. So I'm curious for you to speak on that a little bit.
It's a good point. It's a valid point. I think historically, especially when I started in this industry, the roles were very functional. There were very few and far between. It was the terrorist, the taxi driver, the best friend. They were never the object of desire. And one of the great things about Rishi and in telling this story and this character, he is an object of desire. He is sexualized in a way that you don't get to see South Asian men be sexualized. Um, he is successful. He's an alpha. He drives a sexy car. He's got a gorgeous wife. These things you don't synonymously see for South Asian characters on television. Um, so for me, it was, it's a groundbreaking moment. It's me trying to, you know, break molds and change culture and shift culture and show people that things can change and things can be different and we can play these very different characters that don't have to be about race or ethnicity or culture. They can be, but they don't always have to be, and that's one of the great things about Rishi. I think what the boys did really well is that yes, Rishi is of South Asian descent, but his race is incidental. We don't refer to his race or ethnicity. So that being said, Rishi can be played by anybody. And as an actor, that's the holy grail. You want to play characters that can be played by anybody. Again, you touched on this before, Cory, which is, you know, people who look like me get to play characters who only look like me. I want to play a character that you can also be considered for. And I want you to play a character that I can also be considered for. And that's what that needs to look like. And again, Rishi is in a space where, okay, fine, the name is South Asian, but you change the name. The character is the character, and anybody can really play him, you know? Any race, any ethnicity. Um, so I think that's what's really effective about this show with the representation that this show, whether it's Ken's character, whether it's my character, whether it's Mahala's character. We're showing an array of representation. And actually, one thing I would say is actually, if you come to London and you go down to the financial district, the presence of the South Asian diaspora is wide. There are so many people who look like me in the financial district in London, who are in banking, who are in hedge funds, who are in project management, who are in whatever it may be, any different sector of finance, whether it's accounting, whether it's anything, like they're all there. So actually, in a really weird way, you could argue Rishi and South Asian people are underrepresented in this show, you know? Because I promise you, if you go down there, you'll see so many people. And I know that from friends who work in that industry, from family who work in that industry, from the DMs that I've received from people who are like, man, you represent us, man. Like, we don't ever get seen. So thank you for showing us. Um, and I think that's really groundbreaking. And I'm so happy to take that challenge on and keep hopefully moving the needle.
Yeah. Well, really, I really appreciate everything you just said there. Just like some really
Thank you, man.
beautiful insights. And yeah, like I said, huge fan of you and your work on this show. I just
That's
have
great.
one more question
Yeah.
because something that I find fascinating about my own fandom of this show is that, to be honest, I don't understand most of the financial jargon that is being talked about on industry. Like, if someone were to pitch this show to me in a vacuum, I probably wouldn't even necessarily be all that excited about it because I don't understand this world.
That's fair.
It still goes over my head, and yet I think the show is so incredible, and I find myself so immersed in the world, even when I'm not picking up on what the dialogue is referring to half the time. And so, Chris, for you as an actor, I'm sure on some level, of course, you've learned a lot about this world as your work on the show has progressed, but especially for Rishi, who has to spit a lot of jargon, like a lot of financial jargon, considering his role on the floor. What is it like for you as an actor, line to line, beat to beat, as far as like your understanding of this financial jargon, and how important is that to you in your performance?
No, it's really important. I think for any actor, I think it's important to understand what you're saying. It is to an extent, there's moments where it feels like a foreign language, but that's not a bad thing. It just means you have to go deeper in it. You have to understand really what that means and the emotional understanding of what you're saying, because that's really what's happening on the trading floor. Yes, there are these deals going on. Yes, there are very complex sentences and words that are being used to describe a trade. But ultimately, what's the emotional journey of what's being said? And that helps you get to where you need to get to. Um, from a practical standpoint, it's just drilling the lines. Especially with episode 4, I used to work a week in advance, so I'd have all my scenes down for the following week. So then I'd always work a week ahead. Because again, you need to know what you're saying. It's not the type of show where you can look at your sides in the trailer, in the makeup truck, and then go on set that same day and just kind of wing it. You really need to know what you're talking about. You really need to say it with conviction and convincingly. So that was all my method to just keep drilling the lines right up until that last day of shoot. I was just putting in as much work as I could. But also as an actor, you kind of go, I don't want to waste this opportunity. So if I don't put in the work now, when an opportunity like this is in front of me, when am I going to do it? Do you know what I mean? So I kind of threw the kitchen sink at it, and thankfully people have enjoyed it. So yeah, that's a relief.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I almost this is like a thought I'm having in real time, but I almost equate it to like Shakespeare in a weird way, in that I think back to like when you would read Shakespeare in like an academic setting or something, and maybe the lines weren't totally connecting in your brain, and then you see someone perform it, and all of a sudden it's like they've translated Shakespeare for you. Like it makes total sense because you're seeing the emotion, and that's kind of I think what happens in this show, in
Yeah.
that I may not fully understand. Like if I just had to read these lines on a page, I would probably be overwhelmed, and yet I think you and the rest of the cast do this incredible job of emotionally translating it for us, and in doing so translating it for us, like we kind of now do understand it because the emotion of it's coming through.
Oh, thank you, man. That's so kind. I think all I can say is that, all the actors on the show are so dedicated to making it the best show possible. And everyone puts in the work the way they put the work in because they're passionate about the show and they're passionate about the characters. And yeah, thankfully the response has been so wonderful to us and we're so grateful. And yeah, let's see where it goes.
Yeah, and like I said, yeah, that passion really does come through. And yeah, really appreciate you taking the time to do this conversation, Sagar. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, that's all good. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks again, Sagar. This has been Sagar
All right.
Radia for Industry. I'm Cory Stillman for Awards Radar. Thank you all for listening and talk to you all soon. Bye.
Take care, buddy.